brilliant.
Yes.
Look,
This
now
is
he's
what
triumphant.
matters.
Oh,
Yes.
that's cute.
Yes,
Now he genuinely
come
looks.
on.
and
Oh,
he's
yeah.
got little arms. Look, you can actually do this.
Oh.
Is this on camera? This is awesome.
This is years of working with
Right?
costume
That is
designers. You
seriously
know, yeah,
poor
just a
kid.
touch.
I love that you're so passionate about it, man. That's awesome.
That's perfect.
It's all in the
Kevin, you
detail.
want to slate that?
It's
Yeah.
all in the detail.
Yeah.
That's really awesome.
Thank you.
Take it.
Slate that.
Kevin McCarthy, Washington, D.C. Jude was just helping me out with my, look at this.
I mean, the full Scamander outfit. You
This
gotta
is
pick it. You gotta
amazing.
vote. I'm feeling a bit jealous.
You know I'm playing you in the third one now. Like, they just told me, like, you're out,
Seriously?
I'm in. Yeah.
Can you make your hair flop?
No,
Because that's a signature.
The hair's
move.
looking a bit too.
Yeah.
I'm going to use the
Yeah.
word
Where I got
correct.
hit by a lightning strike.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like. You know, one thing I loved about your character is when I asked you this for the first Fantastic Beasts was the way Newt kind of holds himself. And I love different mannerisms that actors come up with. I'm curious what little mannerisms you chose to do with Dumbledore. And obviously the way he says his words, even in Deathly Hallows Part 2, he says, I have a way with words. People say I have a way with words. Can you talk about the little details you threw into the way he spoke, the way he moved himself?
Well, there was just a tiny suggestion that he had some childhood in Ireland, and obviously Richard Harris had played him, and Michael occasionally used an Irish accent if you listen, just occasionally, when he remembered. And so David and I looked at just sort of adding a slight, what I call kind of burr to the way he talks. And David gave me a wonderful note on the first day. I think I was stood up on the at the top of St. Paul's. I tend to stand with my legs quite wide open, and I stood like this with my hand in my pocket. And he gave me very delicately said, I think Albert stands with his legs quite close together. And it was a lovely note, and I kept it throughout.
Also,
So
the way you used the wand was very.
it's quite delicate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had this idea that I wanted it to be like he was painting.
Oh, nice.
So, filmmaking question for all three of you, and kind of a two-parter element. I'm curious for the briefcase moments when you're going out of the briefcase. I know,
How do they do it?
how
I'm
do
so
you-
glad you asked
Yeah.
that question,
And
because
then I have
want
a
to
second
know.
part to this, but I want to hear this first.
Yeah, well, I mean,
I was so
movie
curious.
movie magic.
But do you like?
It's movie magic was really old school. What I loved in the first film when they were trying to work out what the way in which Newt got into the case, they came up with all these ideas that it would be like a gravitational pull and all these things. And J.K. Rowling was really, it was the one thing she was absolutely adamant about, that it should be old school. It should be like walking down steps. And so they create these
Is it a hole?
holes with steps down them, but the steps are actually really sort of complicated to sort of come out. So you sort of
It's a tiny case.
So you always have to sort of slightly kind of it's not particularly comfortable. You sort of almost have to walk backwards up it.
Last thing for you, the apparate elements. When you guys disappear and then pick, I know it's CG, but when you do you have to move when you pull
you
back
mean?
into it? I'm curious
That
about that.
takes. We go to operation camp. We do.
They
that.
audition a lot of people, you see,
Yeah.
and then the ones who can apparate get the part.
So cool. Yeah.
We did get one great moment though in which Jude and I, we apparate off St. Paul's, and so they'd built half of St. Paul's, and then there was just a 20-foot drop with a big crash mat, and we did get to each time just sort of walk off this thingy and
cool.
try not to look down with fear.
That's right. Yeah. No. Yeah. We kept working out. We had to look up.
This was something also we really didn't understand on the first film, and did rehearsals practicing our apparating, and then realized that you basically become a blur in about 2 seconds. Yeah, once you've had the thought to apparate, you're a blur.
That's awesome.
Oh,
Thank you
wow.
for nerding out on me. I love filmmaking, so I just love that kind of stuff. So
Yeah,
thank you
no,
for-
it's
for
fun.
geeking
I'm
out
glad
on
you
me.
asked. I've been meaning to ask for months.
Well, there we go.
Yeah, you haven't been in the case yet.
Sound speed.
That means he loves you.
That's
Greets you that way.
awesome. Is that really what that means?
It honestly is. I've only been doing it for. No, I'm not gonna say.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, Kevin McCarthy, Washington, D.C. So I'm a big fan of filmmaking. I'm going to start off with a question for you specifically. When you lean back and become the snake, I know obviously there's CGI and things on set, but what does that look like for you on set? Do you physically do all that? Do you fly back into like a mat? How does that scene shot?
I tried and fell very badly on my shoulders.
Really?
But there was this contortionist, her name is also Claudia, and she was able to do the entire flip, and her head came through her legs in
Correct.
person.
Whoa.
Yeah, and we also worked, well, I also worked with the movement coach, Alex.
To be fair, right, is that it begins as Claudia's movement.
Yeah.
What you see, to my understanding, begins as Claudia's movement. She might have fallen on her shoulder once, but she was also totally a soldier about it and kept doing it, and they got a lot of footage of Claudia. I just want to correct the story that's been told. And then also, so the beginning is Claudia's movement, then other Claudia, and yes, that is a magical thing that happened where the body contortionist was also named Claudia, does that movement where head then moves through the legs.
Wow.
Did that on set. And then puppet department came in to give a basis. So that's like a whole, you're looking at, when you see these moments in the movie, what's
So much work
nice,
went into it.
and it's not just computer graphics, which is a huge part of it that does a lot of amazing stuff, but this is a really integrative process where they're also really using, like, they're interested in capturing as much as they can with the camera.
I love that. And one of the through lines for this movie specifically is your character trying to figure out who he is. And it's an emotional thing that we all latch onto as an audience. We're kind of rooting for him to figure it out.
Cool,
We want.
cool.
I want to ask you as an actor, you play a lot of characters in your career so far. I've been interviewing you for a few years, Perks of Being a Wallflower, and all this.
Yes.
I'm curious what this character has taught you about yourself. Like, do you learn things about yourself? I know they're different people, but what did you learn about yourself through playing him?
Yeah, it would be hard to, at this point, because it's been like a year collectively just in production alone, and then it represents years in terms of thought and preparation. It's hard to sum up, but probably it's, it's pointed me equally towards sort of my connection to the pit and the void of sorrow, and it's put me in touch with the realities of myself as a survivor in many capacities, in the subtle ways that I've experienced in my life. And at the same time, it's reminded me to answer the call when magic calls, right? And it's also really spurred me towards what I would say is like my callings. Or like that sort of thing is like it because that's the story, right? Is like if there's a warning in, it's like even if they beat you for being who you are, don't try to repress who you are, because it'll become something actually that you don't want to have inside you. Whereas before, it's a beautiful thing no matter what it is, no matter how bad you think it is or how bad they tell you it is when they're kicking you in the face when you're in middle school. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, trust me, I feel you on that, man. I was bullied beyond belief in school, so I feel where you're coming from on that. So, kind of shifting gears, kind of a more fun thing, and the idea of last night we went to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. We got to go on the ride, which is amazing. As people who are in these movies, do you still go to the parks? Like, do you still geek out? Like, do you go there? Like, do you get like butterbeer? Like, are you guys?
Yeah, dude, are you
Yeah,
kidding me?
I'm
What are you
curious.
talking about? Like,
Of course.
Are you a frozen butterbeer
we are
fan?
people.
No, I know. But if you're in the movie, I'm wondering, do you still geek out when you go to the parks? Is what I mean.
Yeah,
Definitely.
big time. And honestly, I would like to live there. And I don't understand why I can't. Now that I'm in these movies, I feel like it would help. They'd be like, no, the crazy guy who's in the Fantastic Beasts movies, he lives in the Three Broomsticks, or he lives in.
You're gonna start popping out in the rides, and it's gonna like pop.
Merchandise.
like you can, yeah.
I got this little Lego figure of him.
What?
Wait.
Yeah.
What
so
are you
it's like
talking
this
about?
random pic. Like it's just in this little bag.
Have you not seen
kind of have
this?
to feel it to figure out what it is.
Talking about? There's a Lego figure of me.
Yes.
Credence?
And I picked him. And Nagini, the snake.
What are you even talking about right now?
You're blowing his mind right now.
Biggest thing I've ever heard in my life. There are Legos of us.
Yeah.
That's so cool, Claudia.
And I picked you.
We made it, bro.
I'm glad we can have this moment together.
Me too.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah. I love you guys.
perfect
This is amazing.
Wow.
No, thank
Oh.
you. And dude, by the way, this is awesome. I love that.
You like my
that's,
outfit?
That's really cool, man. Nice meeting you guys. So I'm curious.
The picket thing is a great touch.
Thank you. No, you should see the video of Jude Law like putting it in there and like tucking it into the jacket.
can see it. I can see it.
He
Hold
was
on,
so
hold on.
awesome about it. He was cool.
Jude's awesome.
We all, yeah.
We love Jude.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's amazing. I'm curious about the apparating element in regards to when you film those sequences. And I know obviously there's digital effects clearly, but when you step into a moment, you disappear and you come back, are you still in motion as they pick you back up? How do they film those sequences?
It's actually
We did it once, just outside of, right?
it's
Outside
ridiculously underwhelming, isn't
Of, yeah,
it?
outside of.
You want to do like whoa, but then they're like no, too. Hey,
They just
too much,
just
man.
stand there. Just really
It's
stand
literally
there.
just stand there and then they go, alright, cut. And you're like, did I just
Yeah, it's
just
kind
apparate?
of. Yeah.
when you get picked back
underwhelming.
up, you're almost moving. Do you,
Well, there are some, yeah. So there are some later on in the film, right, where
With Dan and.
yeah, when we land into things and yeah, you, but it's the same. You just run and then you have no idea where they're going to pick her up.
That's so cool. I wanted to ask you about
It
that.
is actually pretty amazing.
Yeah. Now, your character, obviously, without giving anything away, is dealing with something very emotional. And I'm curious, like, when you leave set for the day, considering what your character's going through, do you take it home with you? Are you? I know some actors can leave it and go, but does it stay with you in the middle of the filming?
It did a little bit with this. There was definitely one day I had quite an emotional scene, and I came home and I was drinking a glass of wine, and I was with Carl, and he looked over, and I just started crying.
Really?
Yeah, I had just, gone to a place, and it's okay. It just sometimes takes a minute to.
With
to
those
get
kind of
out it.
emotions, they are still bubbling, right, until you sleep.
And you have to go to a real place,
Yeah.
so you bring up your own stuff as well,
What is there anything to get out of it? Like, do you put music on? Like you just kind of like go
No,
through it?
I think the key, when you are acting, is to be comfortable sitting in that uncomfortable place. So you kind of have to just be there until
That stuff as
you're
well that
done.
you do, what you guys are talking about, is you feel it. You can feel you going through it.
Yeah. Well, internally, that's why I think you're such a great actress, because you don't have to say much. In that scene, like, whatever's happening, you feel it in your
I'm
face.
saying nothing.
Thank
The
you.
energy comes off the screen and you pick
agree.
it up.
Yeah.
I always think it's way more interesting when you don't have to speak, but you can see it. So.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Completely agree with you. And speaking of emotions, before I left to come here, I know I'm not going to ask you for any spoilers on Big Little Lies, but my anchors were just like, mention it to her. Can you give us any idea of what's going to happen in the season? Just like briefly, what can we expect from it?
It's juicy. It's very good, and I think it's so interesting to follow this group of women after there was this crazy incident, and now what's going to happen? Who's going to break? Who can handle it? Who can't? Who comes into town? It gets
Andrea Arnold.
Andrea
directing
Arnold, Meryl
too.
Streep.
Meryl Streep,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's.
Do you watch the show?
Yeah. I've
Do you
seen.
watch the show?
I've watched like 4
Do
or
you
5
watch
I
episodes.
just called him out. I'm sorry. I feel bad.
He's like, well,
I don't know what the inside incident is. I watched like 4 or 5. I'm not very good with the series.
You have to watch the end.
I'm
The
about to
end's the whole
start shooting
thing.
a series.
Before I let you guys go, one of the cool things about being...
I'm gonna finish it.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
whatever.
finish
We'll
it.
You gotta finish it.
I'm gonna do it, man.